The Newsday continues here in One News Now Business. I'm Diego Castro. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. The deadline for SIM registration has been extended for 90 days. This was confirmed by Justice Secretary Boying Remulla after a meeting in Malacanang. With this, the SIM registration deadline, initially set on April 26, has been moved to July of this year. On Monday, the Department of Information and Communications Technology met with stakeholders. They tackled the appeal of telecommunications companies to extend the deadline for registration. So far, only around 82.8 million SIM cards have been registered, 49% of total subscribers. Economic managers expect inflation to climb faster than initially projected this year. Despite forecasting an elevated consumer price index, the government has maintained its growth targets through 2028. Shaila Francisco with a report.
The public may still expect elevated prices of consumer goods this year. The Development Budget Coordination Committee adjusted its inflation forecasts to 5 to 7%. That's higher than the previous projection of up to 4.5%. With this, it might take a while before inflation settles to the government's target of 2 to 4%.
The inflation path will continue to decelerate and will, barring the occurrence of any further shocks coming from the supply side, turn to within target sometime in the fourth quarter of this year, most probably around October or November of
The government is monitoring food prices amid the threat of El Nino. President Bongbong Marcos wants the country to manufacture its own farm machineries to increase productivity. He said this would also lessen the country's dependence on import.
Ang lahat ay kailangan natin tignan at pag-aralan para makahanda tayo na kung sakali man ito'y mauulit, tayo naman ay may gagawin. Meron tayong nakahanda at masasabi natin kahit na hindi na tayo mag-import, ay meron tayong sapat na supply na pagkain para sa ating mga mamamayan.
For now, the Budget Department said there's no need to increase ayuda or social assistance this year, though they admit that inflation may affect the budget for other government programs.
But we have already created the TWG under the DBCC. If ever, they are working on the numbers now, assuming that we need to adjust, especially yung mga payments natin for the construction, for the infrastructure sector and other services.
To fill in the gap, the government is looking to implement additional taxes starting next year. By 2024, the Passive Income and Financial Intermediary Taxation Act may be in place. The same goes for VAT on digital service providers and excise taxes on single-use plastics and premixed alcohol. Higher taxes on sweetened beverages and other items may be expected by 2025.
It could actually be sooner. We're just being conservative because it depends on where it is now in the legislative process. The first four measures are pretty advanced.
Despite the impact of inflation, the DBCC maintained its economic growth targets for this year through 2028. It expects the economy to grow by up to 7% in 2023. The NEDA said they are making sure that economic growth will be felt by more Filipinos.
It's not just growth that matters. What is even more important is the inclusiveness of that growth, that everybody benefits from the growth process. In practical terms, that means investments. And by investment, you can improve the quality of jobs.
Shaila Francisco, we are One News.
National Irrigation Administration says it has identified Luzon and Visayas as priority areas for additional irrigation during the onset of the El Nino. This, as the NIA says, Mindanao Island Group is seen to be unlikely affected by the looming dry spell. The NIA says it is looking at implementing alternate wetting and drying systems, as well as teaching farmers to diversify their crops to cope with the El Nino. NIA Acting Administrator Eduardo Guillen says providing farmers with inputs for high-value crops is in line with the Marcos administration's goal to ensure that local producers' livelihoods will not be hit too hard come the dry spell.
Mas malaki pa po ang kikitain ng mga magtatanim ng high-value crops kesa sa rice. Eksakto po ito doon sa programa ng ating Pangulo. Hindi dapat yung income ng farmer per hectare ang higit na titignan natin para maiangat daw natin ang kabuhayan ng ating mga farmers.
The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council has formed a team focused on mitigating the impact of the looming El Nino phenomenon. And the RRMC Executive Director Ariel Nepomuceno says this is in line with the President's call for a whole-of-government approach to prepare for El Nino. The proposed El Nino team will be led by the Interior Department. Members include the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Natural Resources, Energy, Health and Science and Technology, as well as the Office of Civil Defense, NEDA, National Irrigation Administration, and the MWSS. Nepomuceno emphasized that there is a need to harmonize interventions of these concerned government agencies for El Nino. The NDRRMC says the team will prepare for the possible worst-case scenario and identify and harmonize short-term, medium-term, and long-term solutions to address the impact of the weather phenomenon. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on The One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Diego Castro. The Asian Development Bank extended $3 billion in financial assistance to the Philippines in 2022. The latest ADB annual report states that commitments to the Philippines rose by 7.3% year-on-year, the fifth highest in the region. Pakistan received the biggest financial assistance from the Manila-based lender, followed by Bangladesh, India, and Vietnam. The ADB's approved loans for the Philippines include the first tranche of the South Commuter Railway, as well as support for the technical and vocational training and sub-program of climate change action, among others. Philippine Ambassador to the United States, Jose Manuel Romualdez, says U.S. companies have taken more interest in the Philippines but want a more conducive business environment before investing. Romualdez says U.S. firms are eyeing the Philippines due to its stronger than expected growth, Business World reports. Romualdez also says the American business community considered how the Philippines grew during the pandemic, while most countries rode a downward trend. The envoy also says many businessmen consider the Philippines a, quote, safe place to invest in amid tensions between the U.S. and China. In line with this, Romualdez says the government is investing a lot more in both digital and hard infrastructure to create a more conducive business environment. President Bongbong Marcos vows to boost the country's capability to manufacture its own farm machine as part of his administration's goal to improve local agricultural production. The president says he aims to replicate work similar to that of the Philippine Center for Post-Harvest Development and Mechanizations, or PhilMech. He says PhilMech has long been producing machines that work from planting to post-production with the help of foreign partners.
Kung nakikita ninyo yung mga makinarya na naka-display doon sa labas, ay para naman tayo ay gumagawa na, nagmamanufacture na tayo ay ng sarili natin. Nang sa ganun, ay hindi na kailangan tayo umasa sa importation.
The president also says the Agriculture Department has begun its efforts to pursue food security in the country. This to cut back the country's dependency on imports.
Ang lahat ay kailangan natin tignan at pag-aralan para makahanda tayo na kung sakali man ito'y mauulit, tayo naman ay may gagawin. Meron tayong nakahanda at masasabi natin kahit na hindi na tayo mag-import, ay meron tayong sapat na supply na pagkain para sa ating mga mamamayan.
And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Diego Castro. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News. All sides, all the time.